Hey, Bill Sinyard here. What difference could reading good books possibly have in your life and the life of your family, your children, particularly teens and tweens? Well, you'd be surprised. The answer is a lot. Welcome to God's Love for the Unlovable and Gospel Rant series, a new format, Vagabond Diaries. We want this to be fun, informative, life-changing, relevant. We want it to stimulate lots of dialogue within the body of Christ. We want to help parents, single parents, and other parents and caregivers and children's workers. We want to help all of those folks. Listen, it's a rant, so we're going to be doing some things interesting, and we might be taking some a different lens to see biblical scripture correctly, differently. So I hope this is a special treat for you. I'm in the process of preparing a new workshop for Christian parents called Parent Tips from Middle Earth. Yeah, so I'm unpacking the young readers' books of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. I mean, not word for word, but their philosophy of writing back in the World War II era, and in particular, try to find things that could help parents today with our teens and tweens today and younger. You may be surprised just how insightful they were. I've spoken and written about it often in a number of venues, but now I'm shaping this online course. It'll be 6 or 7 lessons. So I want feedback from you. Bill at gospel-app.com. We'll get into the neuroscience of reading and reading good books. We'll get into attachment theory, but for the most part, it's just unadulterated gospel through the lenses of these two great authors. See, I am convinced if they were here today in your living room, particularly you who are parents today, and by the way, if you're not parents, get this to parents quickly, Christian parents. If they were here today, they would be pleading with you to get your kids to read more good books. But what are good books? Well, I'm going to tell you. So for the next 3 gospel rants, we will look at the first 3 of the 7 lessons that I've written, parent tips from Middle Earth. This rant, number 2, is all about the neurology of Middle Earthen teens. Enjoy. Welcome to God's Love for the Unlovable and Gospel Rant. So why is all this talk about books necessary? I mean, you may be a parent of a child that just won't read books. You can't sort of get them to do that, or they're drawn to unhealthy books. I get that too. But parents, teachers, and youth ministers, we need to use every tool at our disposal today to evangelize, to shape, to disciple our 10 to 15-year-olds particularly. Lewis and Tolkien believed that there was something about child-appropriate fantasy stories like Chronicles of Narnia and The Hobbit that were powerful in enabling our child to not only get hope, but be able to comprehend the gospel better. Recent psychological studies show that our teens are on social media up to 9 hours a day. That can't be good. And they're reading just over 5 minutes a day. Honestly, at my book signings, I can't tell you how many parents, secular and Christian, tell me that they just can't get their teen to read a book. But once their teen gets into the book, they can't get them to stop. I believe that parents and youth ministers, we can get our teens to read and should, but thinking one step ahead, we want them to read good books that actually reflect the gospel. And that's largely what this series is all about. In this particular talk, we're going to look at the adolescent neurology, the neuroscience related to the benefits of reading good books, particularly for 10 to 15 to 16-year-olds. All right? I hope this helps. I wonder, as a parent, if we're aware as we should be to just how vulnerable the 10 to 15-year-old brain is to being influenced and shaped by outside forces, more so than almost any other period of life other than 0 to 2 years of life. The adolescent brain, starting 5th or 6th grade, is undergoing a massive reorganization. Just before puberty, again, 5th or 6th grade, your little boy or little girl's brain, gray matter, the thinking part of the brain, it thickens. As brain cells get extra connections, as one researcher put it, like a tree growing extra branches and twigs. I liken it to a chia pet. I usually bring a chia pet to my book signings just for that purpose alone. This gray matter, their thinking capacity, expansion. It peaks around the 5th or 6th grade and then begins a rapid decline during adolescence as it is pruned. And many of the neural networkings are eliminated. We think in a use it or lose it fashion. Here's a quote. After this vast overproduction, meaning of neurons and neural connections, there is a fierce competition elimination during adolescence in which the brain cells fight it out for survival, meaning there's great opportunity here to shape our child. So think of adolescence as a time of vast potential in your child's brain yet to be determined. It's the Wild West in there, largely a messy disconnection waiting to be shaped. Starting around 5th or 6th grades, our children's brains start to specialize. They start deciding by their actions and choices, this is what I want to be good at, this is who I am, these are the people who I want to be with and who like me. This is all about how they see themselves, the world, meaning is it safe or dangerous, relationships, are relationships good or bad for me, and so much more. Their brain is shaping those realities more in the 10 to 15 year age range than in the previous 8 or 9 years put together. Those cells and connections that are used will survive and flourish, meaning technically they become myelinated. Think of a wrap into white cell superhighways. So information and emotions are ripping through those things. These cells and connections that are not used, they're going to wither and eventually just be pruned. One person likened the adolescent brain sculpting to Michelangelo working on his masterpiece, David. He begins with a block of raw granite and begins to remove the pieces that don't look very much like David. Unused nerve cells are pruned so that in some parts of the teenage brain, 50% of neurons will die, and thus rapidly changing your child's brain. Thoughts are now going to travel faster, very exciting and confusing to tweens because of this myelin, this insulation material that increases the speed of nerve impulses, meaning neural firing can be as much as 3,000 times faster. So your child can read more quickly, they can learn a foreign language, they can learn to play a musical instrument, they can become proficient at a sport. A little practice lays down that myelin to enable a skill. So if your teen is doing sports, music, debate club, dance, reads a lot, memorizing scripture, first-person video games, academics, those things are going to become more hardwired. On the other hand, if your child is a couch potato and lacks interest and doesn't focus on anything, or maybe they're doing drugs or surrounded by just anxious thoughts and anxious people, maybe they're gamers, all of that's going to be hardwired, and it's going to likely affect their identity, success, their view of the world and others, and happiness for much of their adult lives and adult relationships. It's brain science. So, to our point here, if they read positive books that they can relate to, that are hopeful, that have representation of positive relationships, good mother and father figures, portray good and bad characters clearly, have justice and consolation at the end of the book, those worldviews will become part of their framework as they grow older. Think Harry Potter, think Chronicles of Narnia, think The Hobbit. But if they read books with ambivalent characters where you don't know if they're good or bad, there's unresolved injustices at the end of the book, or the book doesn't end at all, or there's frightening and scary and anxious creating worldviews, that's going to be hardened. And honestly, think Hunger Games, Dune, both good series, but just saying, most romanticises, many Marvel movies, great for 18-year-olds, but 10 to 15-year-olds, not so much. Doesn't that make sense? Look, don't get me wrong, after their brains are more or less online at the age of 18, 19, 20, 21, go for it. I love the Hunger Games series, but I'm not an adolescent. Well, unless you ask my wife. Your 10 to 15-year-old's very identity is critically affected by their choices during this period of life. But also, very importantly, the positive or negative input and examples of family, friends, mentors, teachers, and coaches, movies they watch, and books they read affects them arguably more than we thought possible just a few years ago. So the opportunity to shape the character and skills and capabilities and well-being habits go way up in adolescence. That's good news, parents. I call it God's redo or God's mulligan. And it's more so than we used to think. Well, Also, in addition to that, your child is being infused with all these new brain toys, hormones and chemicals that bring new powerful feelings and desires that influence behavior. Since the PFC is offline or looking the other way, the prefrontal cortex, the fully formed reward system in their brain, the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure center, some call it, now just liberally is handing out dopamine when certain actions happen. I'll say more about that. The rush of a dangerous situation or peer pressure or this or that substance ingested. Your young child had brain dope before, but nothing like what happens in 10 to 16-year-olds. The amount and speed of delivery is new. And that's the foundation of all teen addiction. And teens are very addiction prone, whether to drugs or people's opinions or social media or good books. Teens and tweens are very addictive prone. It's just how we're made. And then there's the amygdala with its cortisol and fear cycles, right? The fight, flight, freeze that will lead to more teen tirades and arguments. And you wonder, where was my adorable, quiet preteen gone? Does that make sense? You sound familiar? Then there are also the newly unseen sex hormones. Sorry to mention that. But again, without the prefrontal cortex carburetor saying, is this a good idea? They're very dangerous. And with this new chemical cocktail boiling over in your child's developing brain blender, your child can be moodier, more emotional in general, or angrier, or more depressed, or hungrier, and sleepier at the same time. And it seems like for little known reason, other than their brain is unconsciously experimenting with new pathways, new brain-created drugs and hormones that weren't there before. It's exciting, disturbing, and very confusing. And parents and teachers and youth ministers, that's why you're paid the big bucks. So when you ask the child, 10 to 15-year-old, what's going on with you, chances are they don't have any idea. So for tweens and teens, think of the brain not as a balance scale, rational on one side and emotional on the other. Think of it as an emotional blender of new and exciting chemicals and hormones all let loose and flowing together. And in that state, the brain of your adolescent is struggling or flailing for answers to two overarching umbrella questions. This will be helpful. Write this down. Here it is. The first one is, am I enough? Am I attractive enough, likable enough, lovable enough, smart, funny, friend-worthy enough? And number two, is there anyone in this scary world that really has my back, that I can trust, that I can count on, who is there when I mess up, when I fall short, when I make a bad decision, when I screw up again? I like to use these two words to summarize those: enoughness and connectedness. Enoughness and connectedness. And we're wired for both, all of us. But boy, it's no more evident than in the 10 to 15-year-old range. So as the boy or girl bounce around like a pinball, subconsciously flailing for answers to the above questions, your sixth graders beginning to look a little like this. He or she will be influenced by peer pressure more than before. They're going to search for a better father figure. By the way, other than the ones they have or don't have, I'll say more about that in a future talk. They'll struggle between good and bad within them. They'll be more self-focused. They'll make more unwise, risky decisions than before because rational decisions go out the window since the teen brain reacts more intensely to large rewards, often without seeing potential negative consequences. They have a different risk-reward calculus than adults or than they did pre-teen. They read negative triggers differently and are less harm avoidant. The frontal lobe, where they think and rational, when the question is, I wonder if that's a good idea, it's just not online yet. Your child is going to question authority more. They're going to seek immediate gratification and praise. They're going to be more unaware of how their choices and behaviors affect others. They're going to be short-term decision-driven by the emotional brain. So the longer-term consequences, boy, that's a difficult conversation for teens at that age. They're going to be more industrious. That's good news, but impatient at the same time. They're going to want to put some distance between themselves and adults, particularly family. They can express a wide range of often over-the-top emotions. It feels like drama club. They're going to be often aloof and lack sympathy for others. They're going to show more interest in teen culture than they did before: music, video, games, influencers, makeup. They're going to intentionally try to avoid looking childish. They're going to be increasingly self-conscious. They're going to worry more. And here's a big one. They're social media magnets. Between the ages of 10 and 15, the areas of the brain linked to social reward start spewing out happy hormones. Oxytocin, dopamine just explodes, making your young teens wildly extra sensitive to attention and admiration from others. So compliments on a new hairstyle or a football toss or laughter from a classmate, a criticism from a classmate starts to feel a lot more either satisfying or disturbing. This is right around the same time that many teens gain access to Instagram and other image-conscious apps. The designers of social media know this. Per one researcher, by design, apps capitalize on users' biological drive for social belonging, the connectedness, and nudges them to keep on scrolling. But teens who look for popularity online and start evaluating themselves in relation to others, they're going to experience negative psychological outcomes such as depression, social anxiety, decrease in self-esteem, body image concerns across age groups. One researcher wrote, quote, "Kids have a biological vulnerability to want social rewards, and now we're handing them a way to get them on steroids," meaning social media. So, did you see your child in any of those descriptors? I mean, you may be asking, what happened to my baby? And I get that. I was there. So many other parents before you. They were just a kind child, fun, laughing just a year before. And maybe they even liked you. What happened? Well, God designed a lot of things to happen. And see, it's not all your fault and it's not all your child's fault. Not totally. Yeah? But parents, it's an enormous opportunity. It is partly up to you to see that they get exposed to good characters who they can relate to, who feel like they're going through the very same things, knowing that by the end of a book or a story, the protagonist, the hero, with your child narratively in tow, they're going to find a way to overcome their anxiety and worry and loneliness and lack of feeling enough, their need for praise and lack of empathy. They're going to find positive answers to their two subconscious questions. Am I enough? And is there anyone out there who has my back? Your job as a parent, a caregiver, teacher, minister is to be there and reassure them of two things. Yeah, you're enough and you're going to be all right. And yeah, I'm always here for you. And all of that is the integral to a good story. I mean, think Chronicles of Narnia and Aslan. Think The Hobbit and Gandalf. This is what Tolkien and Lewis came to understand, the benefit, the wild, powerful spiritual and emotional and relational benefit of good stories to our children. And this is where good stories can become fantastic tools in the tool chest of parents who want their child to become the best person they can be. Great stories, and Lewis and Tolkien believed good fantasies, child-appropriate fantasies, have clearly defined protagonists who your adolescent can relate to. Think of Harry Potter. We first find Harry in a situation where he's suffering from relational neglect and abuse by his foster parents. I mean, he's a target for social media, right? But there, in that family, he experiences virtually no love, no sympathy or affection, only criticism and mockery, not enoughness, not connectedness. His birth parents have been assassinated. He's orphaned, alone, and misunderstood. He's a troubled youth. And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that your child is Harry Potter or that your child has neglectful or unsympathetic parents, God forbid. But I will say that they feel that way more than you might realize. It's partly a brain thing. And then what? Well, they're going to do what teens do. They're going to develop self-sufficient coping mechanisms. Attachment theory lumps them into two categories, anxious or avoidant. Check out my Good Enough Parent program to find more about that. They're going to find dope hits from substitutes, social media, peers, video games, rebellion, drugs, or they're going to emotionally dysregulate, just blow up when you demand that they eat their Brussels sprouts, which I understand. I'm not a big fan. Or we can prevent that by immersing them in good fairy tales, good stories. Jump into the shoes of the struggling Hogwarts student as they get and find hope as they follow Harry on his teen angst-riddled quest. At Hogwarts, Harry finds a new positive father figure with Dumbledore, and he's on this journey to at last find long-desired security, worth, acceptance, praise, love, loving parents, mother and father figures. And by the way, he's also bumps up against false father figures in this story. He's drawn to every defense against the dark arts professors, but they each turn out to be highly ambivalent characters at best, and most with secret identities and dark secrets themselves, and who will prove to be very poor role models. So Harry learns to keep going back to Dumbledore, a dependable, if you will, Jesus figure. See what we're learning, what our brain is being shaped by. There is a good father out there. And along the way, they're also bump up against addictive forces, the Patronus charms that heal depression caused by Dementors. And along the way, there's also the addictive forces that they must overcome. The Patronus charm sounds really nice, and it heals depression caused by Dementors, but you can become dependent upon that, or other charms that offer power. So on his quest, Harry will, just like about every other adolescent boy or girl on the planet, they're going to manifest a wide range of emotions. They're going to question authority. They're going to struggle between good and bad within themselves. They're going to feel impatient and be more than willing to make risky choices. But the reader knows he's going to find himself. He's going to find his way to a good father. And when he finally is embraced by the father, right, and a father who's not going to leave, and he's going to feel enough, and your child will too as you read it. So I'm on this journey. Reading good books, quest books, can dramatically help your child feel connected to a world in a unique way. He or she can read about characters who they relate to, who are struggling with the same things they're struggling with. And that connection can help them feel visible, less alone. And scientific studies indicate that identifying with a character going through a similar struggle alleviates feelings of isolation and loneliness in individuals, your child. Reading good books helps them build empathy, which can increase your child's ability to connect with people outside of the fictional worlds. Studies continue to show that long-term readers have higher empathy, better social abilities, better perspectives on life in the world, and a clearer understanding of human nature. Empathy. Recent science has proven what generations before us and Tolkien and Lewis seem to have suspected. Reading good books is critical for our emotional, relational identity and spiritual well-being. I believe if Tolkien and Lewis were speaking to worried parents today who are struggling with social media's addictiveness, they would plead with them to immerse their children in good books. See, my belief is that such good stories will expand your child's mind to access the good news of God, of Jesus, the Father, the ultimate Father who loves insecure and unlovable and unlovely and unloved protagonist. And they can pick that up, that framework, in good books. All right? Well, in the next talks, we're going to get into the elements of good stories, of good fantasies, some per Tolkien and some Lewis and some other things that I've picked up. And here they are: fantasy itself, recovery, escape, consolation, and that's broken up into immediate and delayed, providence, clear distinctions between good and evil, and lastly, searching for Father. Good stories can help your child not just to survive, but to thrive in adolescence. And I think if we do it right, I think it can help them see Jesus in a better and different way. So here's some dialogue starters I thought could help maybe parents, if you get together with other parents, or even talk to your teens and tweens if you can. First of all, push back. Second, what did you learn about Tolkien and Lewis and their insights they have about your children and parenting as well? Third, so what have you learned about yours and your child's brain? Hey, listen, if you like this gospel rant, please like and subscribe and forward it. The link to a friend. Check out my award-winning fantasy books, Kingdom Quest trilogy. First is Tale of the Unlikely Prince. The second is The Storyteller's Tale. Third is The Garden Tale. A new book is on the way, The Tale of the Magician Orphan. Look, these are award-winning, and each has been favorably compared to Chronicles of Narnia. Check them out and get them for your teens and tweens, younger teens. They're available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. If you want more information, check out my author page, drbillsinyard, one word.com. Take heart, child of God.